Thank you for joining us for this review of instructions for the submission of the detailed project plan, the expenditure plan, and the contact information form for program year 24-25. The information we'll be reviewing today will give you instructions on how to fill out the contact form, which will be due July 8th, 2024. The detailed project plan, which is due July 31st, and the expenditure plan, which will also be due July 31st. So both the detailed project plan and the expenditure plan are deliverables required for both the 231 and 243 grants. The contact information form is to help us in AEL at TWC to know who is filling the required positions as stated in the grant and who to include for communication. So it's really, really important that this form gets filled out. We would like it by July 8th because orientation will be happening on July 11th, and we want to make sure that everybody who will need to attend or needs the information will be included on the listserv and the communication for the announcements. So let's start with the contact information form. This you should have received. And again, it is something that we have the programs fill out. There's a couple of things on here that are very specific. So on the column to the left where it says TWC AEL grant required positions, these will be the positions that were mentioned in the RFA, including career navigator, director, quality assurance, those specific positions. So we know that sometimes staff wear or have different roles. So a career navigator may also be acting as an instructor or a coordinator, but we would like for you to please select the specific role that they have under this grant or for this grant. Then we have their name, a phone number, and an email. And then we'd like to know if they will be included on the biweekly calls and the TWC transmittals. So for those of you who are new, the biweekly calls are virtual meetings that are held every other week to provide information, timely information from our department out to the field. It's really important to attend these meetings. You get a lot of great information. Mahalia Baldini, the state director, will lead those calls generally. And then we also have our TWC transmittal. So this is when communication comes out via email, again, on very important updates. And this will also be from the state director, Mahalia Baldini. So if you want to be included or you need staff included on those listservs or communication on being the loop of information, it's really important that you select yes for those options. The other thing that's really important for us to know on this contact information form will be any staff that will no longer be continuing with your organization. So maybe they were on the previous grant, but going into the new grant, they are no longer with your organization. We would like those updates because we need to remove them from listservs and also to remove Teams access, very, very important. So if we're not aware that a person has left, those changes generally won't be made and they could still potentially have access to data and information that should be secured. So the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of access and updates, whenever there is a change to staff and they're no longer with you, it's also important that you update their profile in Teams and provide a employment stop date that is reflective of when they ended employment with you. We sometimes find that programs don't put end dates for individuals, and then they may go an entire year looking like they're still employed. And so it's really, really important that those end dates are put in, especially before data is closed at the end of the program year, because then you won't be able to make those changes for that program year. So that's the contact information form. Again, we would like it by July 8th because we need to put out communication for the upcoming TA events that will be happening in July, August, and September. So July, we will have orientation. In August, we will have our business meeting. And then in September, we will have the Fall Institute. So very important that everybody gets this information that needs to attend or wants to attend. The detailed project plan is due July 31st. There are two different templates, one for 231 and one for 243 grants. It's important that you pay attention to what questions are being asked, because the majority of the questions on these templates are basically the same with a couple of differences for the different grants and the services that are provided under the specific funding. So if you have both grants, you will have to submit two detailed project plans. The detailed project plan is really so that we can understand what your goals are for the program year, and also the benchmarks that you will be working towards to meet those goals, and then some additional milestones. So that's a detailed project plan for the most part. We also include in the template what you will be using for your quarterly reports that are submitted every quarter, and also the subrecipient monitoring report. So it'll come in one document and you work with it for the entire year and update it as you are filling out the reports. So for the quarterly reports with the subrecipient monitoring reports, those will be due on the dates that you can see on the slide. You will submit it a few days after the quarter ends, so 10 days after the quarter ends, and there will be 4 in all. So let's get into the detailed project plan. Again, 231 and 243 templates look pretty close to the same. There are some differences in questions that are asked in the milestones, also in the quarterly reports. So again, it's very important to pay attention to what's being asked. At the very top, you'll see what's included in the detailed project plan. There is a content here that's very helpful. It shows you where everything starts and ends. Easy to navigate. You can click on each one. It'll take you to that part of the template. After the detailed project plan, you'll see the quarterly report. So in the quarterly report, you'll see the progress report, which will have a lot of questions for that quarter. And then you'll have a section to elaborate on things maybe that weren't asked of you in the questions. And then you have this section for the subrecipient monitoring for each quarter. And then moving on to the next page on the right, for goals and milestones, you'll have your directions. And again, this is where we want to know what your goals are for the year. So we provided an example. What is the goal? What are the benchmarks that we'll be working towards achieving that goal? The deadline to implement, so giving yourself a timeline to work on or work through or work with. And then also the grant required positions responsible. So this is where it's really important to have those roles filled and to have them filled with the individuals that can really take care of these responsibilities. For example, who would be filling out an IET survey? That could be the career navigator. And then who would be coordinating the training for IET for instructors? That would probably be the PD coordinator. So these are what you want to put in there. It's going to help to give you some structure in your planning. And then also when it comes to making sure that things get done and work is equally distributed. So that would be helpful with this template and how it's set up. The next section we goes to is the milestone schedule. So this basically is asking things related to the grant. So giving an example of some of the requirements that were mentioned in the RFA, employ all integral and required grant staff within 90 days. train program staff on SOPs. So some of the things that were probably mentioned in the grant that could be overlooked, but we just want to bring them to your attention again and make sure that they get completed. Implementation of orientation, for example, is another thing that's required for people that are new to this grant, knowing that orientation must happen for each person that will be participating in services. Everyone is required to have an orientation. So again, these milestones are just things that were mentioned in the grant that are important, and also things for you to make sure that you're staying on top of. So you have a couple of columns. You have the date range, the completion, and comments. So comments is really for you in your planning. If there's things that you have to remember or things you want to make note of, even in the process of implementing some of these things or getting them done. The date range is more like, what is the plan in the time to get these things done? Maybe you have the first quarter, I want to get them done within the first quarter or something like that. And the completion is when everything was done, and then you know that you don't have to continue to focus on that milestone because it's been completed. So then we get into the quarter progress reports. So that first part is the detailed project plan. That part you have to submit by the end of July. These reports, you're not going to have to submit until the quarter report is due. The first one was October 10th, again, as a reminder. But you'll want to get familiar with these questions because it'll just make it easier for you when you have to do the report, because you're kind of aware of what the expectation is and what to look for throughout the quarter. So definitely recommend reading through this. Again, this part of the template won't need to be submitted until the 10th of October for the first report. Then we have the subrecipient monitoring reports. Again, this is not something that has to be sent in or completed with the submission of the detailed project plan. This will happen every quarter at the end of the quarter. So if you're part of a consortium, you should be monitoring your subrecipients. There's some questions that are asked to kind of prompt you, or not questions, some things to prompt you to, think about how monitoring was done, and then provide us with a narrative. So one thing that's really important that we ask for is telling us who is being spoken about. For example, you're a consortium and you did monitoring for one of your subrecipients. So identifying who that subrecipient is and providing details for that specific monitoring situation. And try to be specific. I mean, sometimes these reports, people tend to be kind of general at times, but we will be reviewing this information because it's going to help us to prepare for meetings and also kind of checking on the health of the grant. So the more information you can provide to us, the better. And we want to encourage you to take advantage of this in terms of communication, because we definitely will be reviewing this information. Okay, so let's get into the next thing that is due, which is the expenditure plan. This is pretty straightforward. You only have to submit this at the beginning of the year. So we want to know what your activity is every quarter, or what your plan is every quarter for spending. You'll fill out the grant information at the top. You'll tell us what your projected monthly expenditures are for each category, and then giving us a description of the activity that is associated with those expenditures. So pretty straightforward. As you're plugging stuff in, things will get tallied automatically for you. And again, this only needs to be submitted at the beginning of the year by July 31st. Just a reminder, or for those who are familiar, a reminder, but for those of you who are new, we are pretty specific in how we'd like for things to be named. So the deliverable naming convention, making sure you put in the grant number, also your organization or who the grant recipient is. What grant is it? Is it 231 or 243? And then the detailed project plan. So this would be put in when you're sending it in via email and you're submitting it. You want to make sure that you have this in the email, or who this is coming from, or in the description, because it will get sent back to you. If you don't follow this naming convention, really, really important that it gets filled out correctly, or it's going to get sent back to you and then you have to fill it out. correctly and send it back to us. So we're coming to the end of instructions. You'll submit all of these documents to AEL contracts at twc.texas.gov. This is where all of our deliverables will be going. And then if you need any assistance in filling out the actual documents, we ask you to submit those questions to aelta@twc.texas.gov. We're working on streamlining our communication, so they're coming into 1 or 2 or 3 channels as opposed to going to multiple individuals, and everything can just be managed a little bit better and a little bit more efficiently. If you have any questions or needing assistance, reach out to AELTA for technical assistance. But if you're just submitting the documents to get uploaded, just send them to AEL contracts. So that is all in terms of the instructions. Hopefully they're pretty straightforward. If you have any questions after you look at the documents, don't hesitate to reach out. So that is the end of this info session. Thank you.